31 Days of Norse Gods, Rune Guidance of the Norse here, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Gefjun. Gefjun is an interesting character. She was on a wandering mission for Odin, and she went and entertained the king of Sweden at the time, King Gylfi. You've heard of the Gylfi. Well, in return for her entertaining him, he said that she could have as much land as she could plow. So, Gefjun, very smart, had 4 Jotun sons, and she turned them into 4 magical oxen. And they plowed so deep, so hard, and so large that it ripped a chunk out of Sweden and made it Denmark, precisely where Copenhagen is now. And this is an old fairy tale mythology that you will hear told to Swedish children and Danish children. And it is said that is how Zealand, or Denmark, was created. However, the chunk of land she ripped out almost is in the shape of Lake Mälaren, and so the belief is that that's where she tore it out of the land. And now Sweden has Lake Mälaren. What do you think? Sif, 31 Days of Norse Gods. I'm Rune Guidance of the Norse. Thank you for joining me. Let's talk a little bit about Sif. Who is she? Okay, Sif is most known as being the lovely wife of Thor, the Thunder god. And this is such a symbol of fertility and agriculture, as Thor was the common man's god, the farmer's god. He was a weather god, and therefore extremely important to agriculture and farming. And his wife Sif had long golden hair. It was her crowning glory, and scholars really use this to represent golden wheat harvest, grain. So as thunder and lightning strikes the earth, it's almost a symbol of that penetration or that fertility, and then the grain grows because of the rain that falls. Now, Loki the trickster, famous story for no apparent reason, I believe, kind of just cuts off her hair, causes a big fight. Thor gets really upset. Loki goes and has the magical dwarves, they're always coming in to do something, make her a beautiful, I guess, sort of headpiece wig thing that would grow like real hair, but it would be spun gold, really. And why it's significant, obviously there's something there about the cycles of harvest and that type of stuff, a deeper meaning, but also it kind of is a catalyst that kicks off Loki going to the dwarves for magical items, which throughout the mythos is very, very important. Rune Guidance of Norse here, 31 Days of Norse Gods. You've heard of Mimir, you've heard of Bragi. Well, this one tops them all. Kvasir, he is the wisest, smartest of all created beings ever. He also is the epitome of Norse and skaldic poetry. In fact, he is used as a kenning for poetic expressions of all time. Kvasir was created as a being during the old Aesir-Vanir War. When the gods decided to make a truce, they all spit into a bowl, creating the magic mead of poetry. And that mead was Kvasir, and he was known as the smartest, the wisest of all time. He would go around sharing his wisdom with gods and humans alike. One day he got tangled up with a couple of really bad dwarves. Has that ever happened to you? And they killed him. So he is no more in that sense. However, let's keep the mead of poetry alive. Remember, this is what Odin was obsessed with, the mead of poetry, and would go to great lengths to acquire it. So we know that Kvasir is very, very important and integral to the structure of Norse spirituality. Rune Guidance of the Norse here. It is 31 days of Norse gods, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the goddess Var. Var's name in Old Norse means pledge or vow, and this really reflects her function, her role, because she was the goddess of oaths, contracts, and promises. And these could be promises made between mortals and the law, or even between mortals and the gods. She was a guardian of fidelity and truth, and was said to punish offenders if they broke a vow or a pledge. She was particularly interested in the matters of love and marriage. And that really just shows the importance in Norse society and Norse cosmology of the spoken word, the spoken vow, and how being true to one's word was very important. Super ancient, super primordial. We're going to talk about the god Vili today. Hi, I'm Rune Guidance of the Norse, and welcome to 31 Days of Norse Gods. So today, Vili, one of the brothers of Odin, a huge part of the creation of the Norse cosmos and the world, along with his brothers Odin and Ve. So, they are sons of the primordial god Bor and the giantess Besla. Now, I won't get into the creation of the earth and everything, but they did give life to the first two humans, Ask and Embla, who were made from two trees or logs that they found washed up on the shore. So, Vili's name means will or desire. He's associated with giving them consciousness, intelligence, movement, the mind, and strength, causing their bodies to move and reason and have understanding. He gave them gifts of intelligence and the ability to feel and to reason. Part 2 of the Brothers of Odin. Hi, I'm Rune Guidance of the Norse. Welcome to 31 Days of Norse Gods, and today we're going to talk about Ve. So we talked about Odin's brother Vili yesterday. Today we're talking about Ve. Now, Ve's name is very interesting because in Old Norse it means sanctuary or holy place, and he's the one that gave Ask and Embla their senses, their sight, their hearing, their speech, and their appearance or their beauty, it says. Basically, he made them be the temple that actually holds their spirit and their mind and their reasoning, which is super, super interesting. Now, we know that he and his two brothers killed the primordial giant Ymir and used its body parts to form the cosmos. From his flesh, it made the earth. We know the seas are from his blood, the mountains from his bones, and from its hair, the trees. So, very cool. 31 Days of Norse Gods. Rune Guidance of Norse here. We're going to talk about Thor. Yes, the thunder god. Thor. Oh, the people's god. This is a very, very old energy. Thor meaning thunder or the thunderer. He is a protective shield spiritually for humanity. He is also the representation of thunder, kind of literally, which is amazing. So not just protection from crazy, chaotic, Jotun type of energy and weather, but for the spiritual things. That's why people tend to wear the Mjolnir around their neck, his hammer, as a form of protection. Also a form representing fertility. The hammer was placed in people's lap to represent the organs of the male and the aspect of the activation of fertility into the female. So this is an ancient god. He's a weather god. He's a fertility god, and also a farmer's god as well. So Thor's amazing. We love Thor. Trying to fit it all in 1 minute. Thank you for listening. Tack så mycket. Let's talk about Ullr today. I've had a lot of questions regarding this deity. Hi, I'm Rune Guidance of the Norse, 31 Days of Norse Gods. And Ullr The name means glory. And we see a lot of place names in Sweden and Norway. It's very old, it's very ancient. We tend to think that this deity was associated with winter, with snow, with things that took place in winter, skiing, that type of thing. Ullr is really, really ancient, and we see it kind of fading out and other deities coming in and taking Ullr's place. This aspect of glory isn't, not everything was associated with battle for the Old Norse, okay? It wasn't just constant fighting 24 hours a day, but it's also the glory of kind of an eternal life through the glorious deeds that were passed on and shared down lineages. Again, remember we talked about Oten and Hugin and Mugen and that memory being so important, because that is how one is maintained and given an eternal existence in this realm, through the words and the memories of the glorious things that you have done and you have accomplished. So a little bit about Erler, maybe a different perspective, but very interesting. Hi, I'm Rune Guidance of the Norse. 31 Days of Norse Gods. Let's talk about Sol. Sol is the personification of the sun. That's what Sol means. And we see this in many languages. In the Merseburg charm, there's incantations that refer to her as Sonna. So the goddess Sonna. So this is so fascinating because in Old Norse tradition, the sun or Sol is a feminine deity, where in many other traditions, the sun is a masculine deity and the moon is feminine, but it's the opposite in Old Norse. My theory, again, my opinion, is that because they're farther away from the equator, so closer to the equator, the sun is more aggressive, more male-like tendencies, maybe from their perspective, hotter, around more intense, where the farther you go away, the farther north you are from the equator, the sun is more waning. It is a little more fickle. It only is seen maybe certain times of the year, and then when it shows up, it's there 24 hours a day. So that is my reasoning, in my opinion, why I think they refer to her as a feminine deity or the divine feminine. Also, she is the life giver. They waited for the sun to shine. The sun, when you're in ice and snow, the sun is everything. When you're trying to get heat, when you're trying to grow crops, as opposed to if you're around the equator and you're some of those pantheons or some of those worldviews of things, you're going to be like, turn it down. You're stressing me out with this heat. But anyway, just my opinion. But the goddess Sol, so she is still here. She is around. Do you communicate with Sol? What is your view on the sun? 31 Days of Norse Gods. Yes, today is Odin. And I know, what can I possibly say? What can I fit into like 1 minute plus about the All-Father? Well, we know his name is translated the Frenzied One, or the breath, the ecstasy, those types of things. The One, that energy, that intensity, that fervor that takes hold of us when we are in 31 Days of Norse Gods, I'd like to end with one of my favorite people mentioned, and that is Golveg. So we see her, Gol, meaning gold, is so important in how she was burned and kept coming back to life. She could literally be the personification of gold, this indestructible element that gets better and better and refined with fire. But we also know that she goes out and teaches women who don't want to settle into homemaking her magical skills, her ability. She teaches us. She is one of the very first beings that has magic. Sounds like someone else, doesn't it? And she's gold. That also sounds like a bright, shining goddess that we know a lot about. So this Golveg is a really neat archetype that is worth investigating and digging deeper into. I'll tell you one thing, you don't want to mess with her.